And good evening and welcome to the April 10th meeting of the Murfreesboro City School Board. We're glad to have those of you with us tonight that are in attendance, and we're glad to have those of you that are watching at home or wherever. At this time, I'm going to ask you to please stand. We have two students, Bryson Lewis, a fifth grade student from Discovery School, along with Brenaya Edward Scott, a fourth grade student from Scales Elementary, to lead us in our pledge, followed then by our moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now our moment of silence. Thank you. All right, members of the board, you have a copy of the agenda in front of you, and you've had for a few days. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Settles. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Consent items. I have a motion to approve the consent items.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Settles. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any discussion?
I have one question. I noticed that I'm sorry, I didn't pull it up, but there's a field trip for communications that will allow the students to be on National Public Radio. I'm interested in knowing when that is and how I listen to them. Is it going to be a broadcast on NPR, or does anyone know that? Here, I'll pull it up here.
It just says May. Doesn't give specific scales.
This is on the communications?
Yes, sir.
No, this is under the consent
On the
items.
consent.
items.
I skipped communications. Okay. We'll come back.
Okay, here it is. It's
Now, is this on communications west, or is this on consent?
I'm sorry, I used the word communication and just saying that
It's under approval of
it's
school.
under
Under
approval
fees,
for the
okay.
consideration, board consideration, and it's performance by students at Nashville Public Radio, live in Studio C.
Mrs. Scales and Mr. Johnson like to answer that.
Ms. Johnson?
It's our Still Girl band that will be performing there. I'll have to find out the information to give you the exact radio station that you can.
Yeah, share it with us.
Or in the date.
I'd love to listen in.
What an opportunity, and they are good. So that's wonderful. What
Yeah.
So huge.
great way to show off Scales. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank
Okay.
you.
I have one question, Mr. Chair.
Under consent items? Yes, sir?
I just wanted to know if the trip to Fall Creek Falls was an overnight. It is.
Any other questions? We have a motion already to approve and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. All right, communications, Ms. Trail, I'm sorry.
Okay, for your communications tonight, Mitchell Nilsson would like to thank Sinking Creek Farms, Screen Art, Moab, Fuzzy's Tacos, The Green Dragon, Liquid Smoke, Deep South Growlers, Champies, Alan Farley, Ed and Karen Rogers, Alvin Burns, Collier Smith, Dr. Andy Brown, Ginger and Danny DeMembrium, and Sinking Creek Bike Club for their generosity of either sponsoring a child or donating money to the field trip fund to allow students to attend the Land Between the Lakes 6th grade field trip and other school field trips that are coming up. So a lot of people helping make that happen, and we appreciate that. Also, a special thank you to PAC Orthodontics for their donation of water, and to Zeke Yanez at Pizza Inn for the donations of pizzas to the Ready for Kindergarten spring sessions that are coming up. Murfreesboro City Schools would also like to thank New Vision Baptist Church and the Divas Women's Ministry for their food donation to the Backpack Food Program. Once again, it takes a lot of sponsors and a lot of churches to help us keep moving. Bradley, Discovery, Irma Siegel, John Pitter, Northfield, Reeves Rogers, and Scales will be competing in the 2018 Elementary Science Olympiad. That'll be held on Saturday, April 28th. John Pitter serves as the host site for that Science Olympiad, and it comes through MTSU. We want to thank the teachers who are coaching the teams: Billy Joe Thompson, Suzanne St. John, Shay Payne, Eric Matthews, Angela Pope, Casey Jones, Caleb Jones, Luke Dickerson, Stacy Burt, Zan Lasco, and Sandra Smith. Also want to make sure that you know that the City Schools Retirement Reception and Employee Recognition will be held at the Grove on Wednesday, May 9th at 6 p.m. And the MTSU Math Competition will be held Thursday, April 12th, this Thursday. The award ceremony will be begin at 12:45. We have Overall Creek, Mitchell Nielsen, Hobgood, and Scales all competing in that event. And the coaches will be Aaron Nunley for Overall Creek, Allison Murphy for Mitchell Nielsen, Chick Knitter for Hobgood, and Craig Offit for Scales. Students and staff from Murfreesboro City Schools will also be supporting quite a few activities over the next few weeks. Special Olympics is Friday, April 13th. The second round of Petals and Pearls will be held on Saturday, April 14th. This is a joint venture program with Rutherford County Health Department and Read to Succeed. The Club Marvel graduation is Saturday, April 14th at 11:15. It will be held at the new Science Building at MTSU. Club Marvel is the group that goes every month to MTSU to discover new opportunities in careers, led by Greg Lyles and his team. Our Farm to School team will be part of Adventures in Agriculture on Saturday at the Lane Agri Center. We're hoping for nice weather and a big turnout. We also have a group that's going to be participating in Earth Day on April 21st. Teacher Appreciation Week is May 7th through 11th. And then we want to remind everyone of a few important dates as we prepare for the next school year. Kindergarten preview dates are going on now. That's been sent out to the public through lots of press. And the dates and times vary by school, but it's on our website. So if anyone has a child who is beginning kindergarten next year, so for that 2018-19 school year, the child has to be 5 before August 15th. And if they go and visit the website, they can see the preview dates as well as the kindergarten registration dates, which kindergarten registration is May 3rd and 4th. Choice school applications are being accepted during April for our 3 choice school programs, Hobgood, Mitchell Nielsen, and Bradley. Preschool applications are also being accepted through April 13th, through this Friday at all schools, and after that they will continue to be accepted, but they'll only be accepted at the central office. To enter in our preschool program, you have to be 4 before August 15th of 2018. And again, all of this is on the website for folks to go back and look into, or if they want to call central office, we'll be glad to guide them in what they need to be doing to prepare for the next school year, even though it's hard to kind of wrap your mind around that. But if you have a 4 or 5-year-old, you're probably thinking about school next year. And then before I end, I want to also take time to congratulate Jonathan Walling for passing his CPSI test for playground inspection. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Anderson to kind of tell you what CPSI is all about.
Thank you, Ms. Trail. As you all know, that we really make sure that our children are as safe as possible at our schools. And one of the things that the children are always on is playgrounds. They're always out there doing things, climbing and jumping. And so Risk Management Department of the City of Murfreesboro has been always there to make sure that we are checking and inspecting our playground equipment. Mr. Larry Williford, supervisor of our maintenance department, has been very diligent in working to get one of our young men in our department to take the CPSI, which stands for Certified Playground Safety Inspector, And as they pointed out, he can now put initials behind his signature now. He has passed this test, which means now we have someone certified to go out and inspect our playgrounds. The test is extremely difficult, and just his diligence in making sure that he went through and got past the test has been tremendous, and we are really appreciative of that. So I'd like to ask Mr. Williford if you come and say just a few words about Jonathan and what he has done and what he has accomplished with this, and then Jonathan would like to say a few words, because he's going to have it on TV. We know, have to have it recorded.
This is a three-day class.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a very intense course. His training brought us 100 percentile on risk management on his questions. He missed one. We're very proud of that fact. Also, today is his 1-year anniversary being employed by the city schools.
Oh, that's really
Nice.
Jonathan, would you like to say a few words? You can say how wonderful Mr. Williford is.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here. I couldn't have done it without Mr. Williford. You know, I passed the test, and it was hard, but without the motivation and the pushing that Mr. Williford did to get it done, really is what propelled me forward. But I'm really enthusiastic about it. I love the work that I do. It's fun being out there with the kids on the playground. It's a big job. It's a big role, but I just want to let you guys know, and let everyone know I'm here for it, and we'll get it taken care of. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to introduce your lovely wife that's here with you?
This is my wife, Tamara Walling. She also a big role in it.
What you just saved him.
Been there and done that.
Well, thank you for, one of the best things about elementary school is the playground.
Yeah.
And especially in the last few days, I haven't really asked about what's been going on in the classroom. I've been asking about what's been going on in the playground because the weather's been nice.
Yes.
So thank you for making it safe for our kids. Thank you.
And having just been here a year today, is that right?
Yes, sir.
That is excellent.
great.
That's great.
That's good.
Impressive.
Unless you have further questions, that's your communication.
I do.
Okay.
If you will, please look at the agenda that we have. A lot of the items that you mentioned are not on this agenda, and they need to be placed on the agenda so that the public knows. There must have been 5 or 6. After you did about the math competition, between that and the Teacher Appreciation Week, there were several in there that we don't have. Thank you.
You're right.
Okay, Ms. Smith?
So can you tell us about the preview days? Is that for the kindergartners, is that a day that the kids go or the parents go or both?
It's a day where the families go, and there's different times. So every school has at least one day and 2 times that they've invited children and their families to come. And honestly, probably the best people to ask would be probably Maria or Christina, either one, if you wanted one of them to answer those questions.
Yeah, tell us, very briefly, if we were kindergarten parents, rising kindergarten parents, what would happen that day, how long it would last, that kind of thing.
Actually, our tours were today. So we had them at 8 o'clock and 12 o'clock, and families came in with the students. We introduced the staff, introduced them to the front office staff, gave them a tour of the school, talked about the programs that we have at Scales Elementary School for the kindergarten students. I actually gave them a tour of the playground, the classrooms, the special areas, to build that interest in coming to Scales. So it would be the same as the other schools. Do you want to come talk about yours?
Because we have school tours for the parents typically in the fall before admissions begins. So the parents that will be coming this Thursday for our kindergarten, we will have 30 at 9 o'clock, 30 at 1 o'clock, and our student ambassadors will actually take those students in groups of 10, and they will spend 15 minutes in each kindergarten classroom with the students and the children, just looking at what a classroom will look like. The parents will remain with us, and we'll have our PTA representative, our ESP staff will be present, and we'll just share information about the school and take questions, and then offer a tour at the end.
Thank you very much.
It just gives them an opportunity to get into the school a little earlier. And however, we know we're not going to get all of our new kindergartners. In fact, some of them haven't even moved to Murfreesboro yet, but hopefully we'll get quite a few to come in the doors and see our schools and see all the wonderful opportunities they're going to have next year.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
All right, next item on the agenda is second reading of board policies. We'll take these one at a time. If you have a question, we'll get that, and then I guess we will approve on second reading each policy as we go through. So the first one is policy 3.203, crisis management.
Mr. Chairman, do we want to go through the action items before? I see we've got approval of Johnson & Bailey as architecture.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've skipped that. Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Let's go to the action items.
Okay.
Recommendation for tenure.
Before I do that, we have an answer for the Steel DeBurl for radio. It's going to be broadcast Tuesday, May 8th, and Ms. Van Cleve is going to email you this as well on WPLN 91.1 at 12:06. Tuesday, May 8th, 91.1 at 12:06. Then it's going to be rebroadcast Thursday, that following Thursday, May 10th at 6:06 p.m.
What took you so long?
We have 3 additional teachers who have earned tenure, and we would like for you to approve their tenure tonight. Elizabeth Shepard from Discovery, she's here. Elizabeth, can you please stand? Thank you. And we have 2 others, Ginger Hazelbecker from Bradley and Jennifer Scott from Irma Siegel. They were unable to attend, but they asked me to give them a big cheer, so this is my version of a big cheer. Please give these individuals a round of applause for attaining tenure. So it's our recommendation for you to approve tenure, so if you would do that, please.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve these 3 for tenure?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. King. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you, and congratulations to those 3. Approval of Johnson & Bailey architect for the new school.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Campbell. In your board packet is the letter from Johnson & Bailey. It's not a contract, it's a letter, and the reason it's the letter, it explains what the basic design will be, is because the city will be the ones who will actually be contracting with Johnson & Bailey if you approve them to be our architectural firm to move forward with this. They will be the actual ones to do the contract, and they will also be hiring it's a company organization that will be our advocate at the meetings as well. That's one of the new things the city has put into place. So what we're asking for is for you to make a motion and approve that we use Johnson & Bailey to design the next new school that we're getting ready to build as soon as everything is settled on land and everything is worked out. And it's for 1,000 capacity students, very, very similar to Overall Creek. They found some areas within the building envelope to put additional storage areas, and that's why the square footage is a little bit more. This current square footage is 138,000 for Overall Creek, and this one's going to be 142 because we found extra square footage in the building that we could actually use over the cafeteria area, because if you notice in the current design, the cafeteria is really high, and we can drop part of that ceiling down and make for extra storage. There never seems to be enough storage in a school building, so we've got that. So basically what we're asking you to do is to approve for Johnson & Bailey to be the architectural firm that the city negotiates with on contractual agreements.
I noticed when they're proposing the construction cost at $165 per square foot. Now, is that binding?
No, sir, that's an estimate. They'll have to put this out to bid, and they're using what the market is right now. They've actually have some at $195 per square foot. So it's just whatever the market's going on, and that is drastically impacted by the construction in Nashville.
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Mr. Settles?
I only have one question, I think, and that is the letter references, and this may just be how they did it, it references Southwest Elementary School. And I'm guessing they just did that as a point of reference?
Yes, whenever a school district is getting ready to build a school, they typically give it a geographic location to start, and that's what they just say, so they have a reference point.
I got a question. So I'm seeing 165, but in the first paragraph it says 195. So which one is it?
It's in the fourth paragraph
Is it?
too, at
Yeah.
195.
Yeah.
No. It's, that says in lieu of the higher anticipated cost
Okay.
of 195.
All right. I saw the 195.
So it's at 165 is what they're hoping.
Okay.
Well,
What they're-
they're basing their fee at 165. Even if it comes in, they estimated 195.
Okay.
So they're basing their fee on that. And their fee is a percentage, and it's drastically reduced. Most school districts are 5.5%, 6%. And because we've used this basic plan before, they still have a lot of tweaking and stuff to do when you go into a new site. But that's what they're saying here. But ultimately, they will negotiate with the city for the best price the city can get.
Ms. Smith?
Can you tell us again why this did not have to go, why the services of our architect don't have to go out to bid?
Yes, state of Tennessee says if it's a professional service and they actually identify architects and lawyers as, and Kelly, can you think of any other one that fits that definition? Engineers. Anyone that's got a professional license like that, we do not have to bid. And a lot of it is based on the familiarity of the programs, because Johnson & Bailey has done our schools. They know our schools inside and out. Going out to a totally new firm that doesn't know what we're doing, the state has identified it. This is a major purchase for a school system to do. And so they said if they have professional licenses, they have proven track record, you do not have to put them out to bid.
Thank you.
Mr. Barrett?
Remind me how much overall was for the construction. You know, they're estimating 27 here. I just wasn't sure. I couldn't remember off that.
The actual construction came in under 17,000. Now you still have another roughly 900,000 for furniture, another 600,000 for technology that goes in on top of that, plus the land purchase. They're just talking construction costs
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. I just.
You meant 17 million?
Mr. Ballard?
You're right,
17,000.
Thousands of millions.
Did I say 1,000?
Yeah.
It was a great deal.
It was a great deal. I was going to build 3 schools in my backyard if that's the case.
So, Mr. Anderson, if I understand how you explain their fee, is that actually what they're saying, the way I read it, is that it would be no more than the $165 per square foot at 3.94%.
That's what I understand it to be, but ultimately the city will see that and make their determination. But what they're saying is they're going to fix it at 165. Even if it comes in at 195, they're going to max it out at 165.
Yeah, so basically they're not going, in other words, they've put a ceiling on it so it won't go any higher.
Right.
So right now, if you take the 23,457,000, their fee is going to be $924,000. So we should expect that would stay pretty level.
Yeah, they're not going to go over that because I don't see the cost coming in under 165.
Right.
Now, for that fee, can you just kind of give me a real quick, read of what they are going to do? They don't let the construction contract out, right? The city does that.
They actually conduct the bidding process, but the city will have to approve the ultimate. They go through and they qualify all the bidders, and it's in here. It's one of the last paragraphs. The fee includes architectural, structural, civil, landscaping, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, kitchen design disciplines. And the scope of services includes schematic design, design development, construction documents, bidding or negotiating, and construction phase services as described in the document. Now, my understanding is that the city wants to take part of that last part out of it and hire an outside firm to represent the district instead of the architect.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think I understand. We'll be getting more information, I'm sure, but the thing I wanted to be comfortable with is that I understood that they were basing their fee at that 165 per square foot.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's the way I understand it.
That's how I read it.
Is there a reason why we want to pull part of it away from the architects?
The city has adopted this methodology of protecting the governmental entity and have an outside firm. So they're saying, what they're saying is if a construction company and an architect are at odds over whatever particular thing, they're saying if they had a third party and they're representing the district, then it would take the edge off of the two of them together.
Okay, thank you.
It's a new policy that as far as how we're building some of the construction that's going on in the city now is this type of construction manager that's representing the city. There's actually two firms that are doing some of the construction that's being done now, and I'm not sure which one they're recommending, but it's a process that we're trying to do a little bit more efficient and, of how we build buildings.
All right. Okay, do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. King. We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Settles.
Yep.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, approval of the Family Resource Center Advisory Board.
Yes, that is in your board packet as well. It is the names are listed there, and I don't know, Mr. Lyles, would you have some more information on that?
I have a question for Greg before you get started. Are you
Yes,
feeling
sir.
okay tonight?
I
You have
am.
on a necktie instead of a bow tie, and so I was just wondering if it was all right.
We'll talk later. As a part of the, I wouldn't say a contract, but the grant we get from the state for the Family Resource Center, one of the stipulations in that is that we have an advisory committee for the Family Resource Center. So that's why that is. It's a yearly thing that we have come before you for your approval.
Okay. Have a motion. I'm sorry, Mr. Barrett.
I'm the parent representative.
We have not named that person. That's why that's blank.
Okay, and there's a plan to do that?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
there will be a parent.
All right.
That's one of the stipulations. There have to be a parent representative.
And who appoints that parent? Or who?
We seek out folks that are interested and then ask them to serve.
Okay.
And it's just an advisory capacity.
Do I have a motion to approve the Advisory Board Family Resource Center?
So moved.
Committee? Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, second reading of board policies. 3.203, any discussion or question? All right, Mr. Settles.
I have just one question. It's on line 8. And this is a very short policy. But line 8 states that all media attention shall be directed to the Director of Schools office. My suggestion is that it would be directed to the Communications Director, or however that is phrased, the Director of Communications, because that's, and I did talk with Lisa before we got started, and she said that that is normally how it works, is that media questions come to her, and in the management of a crisis, our thinking is that the director may be busy otherwise, and it may be better to go to the Communications Director instead of to her office directly.
What if we said media attention directed to the Director of Schools, slice or designee?
Well,
I think her role is to receive media calls. If at any time that there is a media call, I would think that it would be funneled through our Director of Communications.
I'm not saying it should not go that route. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is if you put Director of Schools / designee's office, it could be either. I certainly think that whatever media statement or whatever is going to come from the media office, it certainly should go through the director of schools first. I would not think that our media people would make statements to the media that had not first been
Well, and
discussed with the director of schools. Mr. Settles?
that was kind of my thinking, because it says all media attention shall go, and not necessarily, in other words, if the media had questions, as they do now, and maybe Lisa can speak to this more specifically about any information that maybe news outlets call to receive on what's going on in schools. I'm thinking of something recently that was going on, and we were advised, of course, we know if we have any questions to direct them to you as the communications director. How does that normally work?
Well, I think that both of you, like, are saying it's the same. So the communications would be directed to me, but I'm not releasing information that Dr. Gilbert doesn't know that I'm.
Right.
But yes, the communication would start with me, but I'm not making a media statement that Dr. Gilbert hasn't already heard about, known about. And I think what you're asking me is in a crisis situation. And in a crisis situation, we all have our own roles to follow. And yeah. Is that what you're asking? So
That is.
Communication funnels.
That is.
One. It makes it easier for the media. It also makes it easier for us. Yeah.
I think the word that is important to me in this is directed. Because when they call, they will be directed. That's normal protocol, in my opinion, that when a person in the media would call an office, a professional office, and they would be directed to the director of communications, and then if she were to put out a media release on paper, then that would be approved by the director of schools. But that's not exactly how that is written. This is just all mediation should be directed to, and that would be the director of communications.
Right, and I think that's inferred when it's talking about the director of schools office. It doesn't say the director of schools.
Now, even up in the first paragraph, when it says within the development of a plan, the principal will appoint a crisis response team which shall deal with specific situations, make decisions, and disseminate information in the event of a crisis. So now, would that give the crisis response team part responsibility and of speaking with the media?
Everything that happens in a crisis is going to come through the central office. That's just automatic.
Okay. All right, Mr. King.
Would, given all that's been said, how about we could reword line 8 to read, all media requests shall be directed to central office and handled by the communications department.
That is fine, except that is not going to necessarily be true.
Okay.
Well, and I
was kind of like going like Ms. Smith, talking about the word directed. I thought, well, a media attention request from the media. But
Mr. Settles?
Thank you. I'm sorry. I guess I'm going back now. We go into the paragraph line 4, where it defines members of the team shall consist of the principal, school counselor, and at least 2 other staff members designated by the principal. I'm sure that could include the communications director. I guess I just want to see the communication director in there somewhere. That's probably just me, but I think I'm touting the fact that we have a communications director. We've advanced to that point, and I think somewhere in here, if that could be put in there in the policy, rather than just to say at least 2 other staff members, maybe you would say, along with the communications director, then I would know for an assurance when the media calls, it's still going to go to the director's office and the crisis team is going to handle it, and that would be the communication director's part. So maybe I could, maybe we could alter it somewhat to include communications director in the crisis team, although it may be, understood, maybe just to include it.
If I could bring you an administrative directive related to this, I'd prefer to do that, because I don't want to be in a situation where I'm violating board policy because a crisis happens and there has to be an immediate decision about it on part of the principal, and the principal may call me, and I may say, here's what we're doing, and then inform Lisa. Just surely it could go the other direction too.
Okay. Then would we like to defer second reading passage on this policy until after we get a view of the administrative directive? Is that permissible to board members?
Be aware that that administrative directive can change, though, and it changes without board approval.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion to defer this particular policy?
I so move.
Thank you. Mr. Settles, have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. All right, we will defer that one. All right. Board Policy 3.218, service animals in the district facilities. Do I have a motion to approve this on second reading?
So moved.
Thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. Board Policy 3.500, Food Service Management Program. Have a motion to approve this on second reading?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Settles. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Okay. Board Policy 6.415, Student Suicide Prevention. All right.
This is a good policy. I wasn't here last meeting, so I wasn't here when you all read it the first time, but I did notice one thing I'd like to add, and I talked to Dr. Gilbert prior to the meeting, but I noticed the staff wasn't included. You know, it mentioned focusing on the students if something were to happen in the school, like a suicide, and of course it's going to affect the staff as well, so I'd like to see at the end of the policy, in addition, the crisis response team shall work with staff impacted by the death to provide assistance and support if needed, if we can add that to the policy.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion to approve the policy as amended on second reading? I'm sorry.
I have
Mr.
just
Settles?
one question, and it may not be that important. On line number 34, if the student is under the age of 18, and I'm thinking that all of our kids are under the age of 18. So I don't know was that just included for?
I think it's there just because that's what the law
Okay.
says.
The state
Okay.
law, yeah.
All right.
All right, now do we have a motion to approve this policy on second reading?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett.
Yeah.
We have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. All right. Reading of board policies, first reading. 3.205 pertaining to security.
This one really is basically TSBA policy. It's a policy that we need. We're in the process of developing a memorandum of understanding with the police department. Actually, it's one that we started a few years ago, and Kelly, I just don't think we ever finished it, so we're in the process of finishing that. So you do have that related in here. This is needed, and it's particularly needed. We need to go ahead and vote this week and also in 2 weeks, because we did receive information on Friday that the state will be releasing some funds, and I think that this is going to be necessary for us to have a policy and also have an MOU that's in place, and that's going to happen pretty fast as far as having an audit, and I'm assuming that part of that audit would also include having an MOU with the police department. So essentially this just talks about what we already do, really.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Settles?
I have a question. It's on line 32, and I don't know that it's a question as much as maybe a comment or concern. No officer shall be assigned to a school or continue in such an assignment without the consent of the director. And I don't know if there needs to be more in regard to the input of the director of schools in dismissing or getting an officer reassigned. And I know that says kind of the continuance part is in there.
That is actually going to be addressed in the MOU.
Okay, and that was where I was going.
Yes,
Okay.
there's language in the MOU that gives the director in the school.
I just wanted more teeth.
Yeah, they have more input.
Okay.
That's listed in the MOU.
That was my concern.
Any other questions? Mr. Barrett?
I just want to add it was a good policy to have, given with all the recent focus on school safety in the news and everything else. So I'm glad we're moving in this direction.
All right, do we have a motion to approve policy 3.205, board policy security?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. All right. Student transportation?
If you have questions about this one, I'm going to defer to Mr. Anderson, but basically, the state is asking us to have a transportation supervisor. Obviously, we already do, but that is part of it. I think transportation is going to become more important as we take a look at safety, but what you have here is basically what we already do. As you're aware, we now have a number on the back of our buses that people can call about complaints, and those complaints are reported. Those would be the big things I think that really have changed is really just the label and the fact that there's a complaint procedure.
Mr. Ballard?
Line 6 and 7, I guess this is best case scenario, but it says financial burden. To avoid the burden of replacing aging bus fleet at any one time, the board shall attempt to replace a certain number of buses each year on a rotating basis. How do we do that? Have we retired any buses? I know the book buses must be a retired vehicle, but
we retire buses on a regular basis when their time is up. There's been a little extra time on buses because the state a couple of years ago passed a ruling that said they could go an extra 2 years if they didn't hit 250,000 miles. So we've been fortunate, since it's a city system and our driving distances are not that great. We didn't have the many buses going over that number, so we were able to extend it. But we have still kept up with buying 2 or 3 buses every year, because there's 1 year, and I'm not sure if it's next year or the year after, when you were hit with 6 buses. Wow. And we didn't want you to go through 6, so we've added 2 or 3 every year to lead up to that, so we don't get hit with a hard. And that's why that's in there, and that's the recommendation from TSBA too, because paying for 6 buses is over $500,000.
So a bus purchase comes, when you say you're ready for a bus, or Dr. Gilbert, it'll be brought to this board to approve that bus purchase?
Yes, it's brought here either through budgetary means or in the budget document, or last year we went to the city council to do it, and so it was in the capital outlay. And so we've done it both ways. One of the issues with buses is you have to buy them in February to get here in time for the start of school. It takes them a long time. We have a little extra room here because we have a couple extra buses that are spares. We don't want to extend it too long, but we will use those until we can get the buses, and we're waiting for the city council to review our budget, because it's in the capital outlay for the city council to pay for the buses.
So if it's not directly brought to the board and say we need to buy 2 buses, but yet we do need to buy, you say it could be we have approved that in the budget already, or we've approved it through some other.
It's in the capital outlay in your board budget documents. It's in there, but it's under the column for the city council to approve.
Okay. I just want to, in 18 months, we haven't discussed buying new buses.
And because the city council's been paying for it, they've been in your budget, but it's in that column that is the city council. We asked them to pay for.
That's by design, so we're not increasing our budget, right? Okay.
Yeah.
We put it in capital outlay, the bus purchase.
Okay.
So like 5 years ago, we had this bus crisis, and we had to we had to ante up the money, right, for that?
Yes, what
But-
happened-
and we had multiple buses that we had to get at one time.
And what happened with that was when the gas crisis came in, people all of a sudden decided, oh, it's a lot cheaper people riding a bus. Our ridership went up almost 1,000 students in one time. We went from 2,000 to 3,000. So we had to buy buses to get through that crisis. But yes, you're right. We had that issue. So we always want to have 2, 3, or 4 spare buses because they break down like cars. Especially, we keep them now 17 years, so something can go wrong anywhere in that window of time.
Mr. Tuttle?
I just had a comment on line number 18. Line number 18 is redundant. It says, every year the transportation supervisor shall complete a minimum of 4-year hours of training annually. So that sounds like maybe one was tacked on to the end of another.
Okay, that's a brand new ruling by the state, and actually her training date is this month.
Okay.
She goes for the training.
So we just said the transportation supervisor shall complete a minimum of 4 hours of training annually. We don't need the every year at the beginning.
Okay. I see.
Every year.
Okay.
Mr. King?
Gotcha.
This policy seems to deal with the processes, if you will, of managing the buses. Is there a different policy for how we hire drivers? I mean, that's a different policy itself, am I correct?
It would be in the personnel.
Okay.
Right.
I just want to make sure that my thinking was right.
And there's guidelines for drivers that they have to pass certain tests.
Yes.
They have to go through physical abilities, they have to go through background checks, and they have to have DOT physicals.
But like I said, all that is spelled out in a totally different policy. This is for the buses themselves and how they're managed.
Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Same topic, but not necessarily the policy. What is the practice of renting buses from Rutherford County Schools for field trips?
Okay. First priority is that they use one of our city buses for a field trip. If the field trip extends beyond the normal school day, in other words, we want the buses back in our house by 1:30 or right around that time so we can get to the first school at 2:30. If it goes beyond that, then they are allowed to use another outside contractor. The state law changed on that too, which says that they have to pass, especially the common carriers, the big bus, the big coaches.
Right.
Now, thankfully, Rutherford County Schools buses have already passed all the stuff they need to pass to be a bus driver. But that's the basic rule of thumb. If they're going out of the area and can't get back by 1:30 or so, then they can go ahead and contract with the Rutherford County bus. We use those buses. We use Rutherford County buses as well when we had the basketball game because we had to get 100 bus trips, and we don't have 100 buses.
At the same rate that we would pay or use?
For that particular event, or for?
Do we pay a certain amount? I mean, do we rent? How does it work that we're?
Each school, if they're going to go on a field trip, they negotiate with them for what the rate will be for an outside bus usage. For our field trips, they have a chart to follow that has what the mileage is to the location, what the cost is per how many hours you're going to use the driver, and we have it very, very well simplified for them to figure out. But if they're going to use an outside contractor, they have to negotiate independently with them as long as they have the insurance carriage that we require that they have.
I see. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, any other questions? Have a motion to approve policy 3.400, student transportation management.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. All right, 3.401, policy scheduling and routing.
Mr. Anderson, I'm going to let you take this one.
Okay.
Thank you.
This policy is about how long kids can be on the bus, how far away, how many hours are on a bus. Like they can't be, the state law is no more than an hour and a half one direction. Our goal is no one over 45 minutes. Our basic run is 30 minutes or less. So we try to keep it as short as we can. This one also talks about who can get on and off a bus and when they can. If a child wants all of a sudden have a party or something at someone else's house, there is a process we have established that they have to have a note going to the principal notifies transportation department, and then they have to give the bus driver a piece of paper that says that the principal has signed, says Johnny can go and get off at this stop. So that's one of the changes that we've had in place for a long time. Pretty much we don't drop kids off unless it's their stop, unless we have something in writing.
All right, look at line 13. I'm a little confused. Student shall be allowed to exit the bus at a stop other than student's regular bus stop unless the student provides the driver with a signed note from the parent or guardian informing the driver of change. The driver should turn the note over to the principal.
They're supposed to give the note back to the school after that for the record, but the practice that we have in place is that they tell the principal first, notify transportation, and then they take that piece of paper that they've given the principal and goes onto the bus with them for the bus driver to have.
That's not what this paragraph says, the way I read it.
We kind of we went above and beyond the minimum there because we want to make sure everybody's in the loop on it. We can change it.
Well, to me, it says that if the student gives the bus driver a note from the parent or guardian telling the driver to change, the student change in the bus stop, then the driver's going to turn the note over to the principal as soon as practical after completion of the route. You see where I'm coming from?
Yes, sir. The problem that the bus driver has is they don't know who the legal parent or guardian is. And
that's my point.
They have done it. That's why we have it go to the school office first before, because they'll know who is allowed to sign off on that.
Well, then should we not change that paragraph?
We can. That's fine. We just went above and beyond in our own practice.
We want to match what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it
I wonder
kind
about
of
that too.
one conflicts over the other. Looks for where I am anyway.
Yeah.
We can change. Glad to change the wording in that to the actual process that we're
The
following.
way it reads right now, they can just give it to the driver and get on the bus and get dropped off. So yeah, let's change it.
And I guess because it says that the procedures shall include at a minimum the following. So that gives leeway to add in there. So I guess it's just more comfortable if we do it on the front end. I was confused by it too a little bit.
So was I.
I'm
just saying.
Speaking of confusion, I was reading, starting at line 17, the second bullet point, in the event that the driver finds it necessary for a student to exit the bus at a stop other than the student's designated stop. And when I got right there, my mind took off in a totally different direction, thinking, oh, so here's the bus going down the street, and I can't let the student off. I can see the house, but I can't get there, traffic, construction, whatever reason. And then I kept reading, and it's not that. It was, no, the student was unruly. And so I kind of thought, do we need to separate this bullet point number 2, if you will, into two distinct things where it's okay to let the student off because I can't get to the house, and then a different one for we're going to let the kid off, the student off, because they're unruly, and we're letting them off for the safety of the other people? Or is my mind just out there?
We don't drop students off at. We have a bus driver and a bus assistant on the vast majority of our buses. We're not going to just drop them off. What they have is the radio communications, and then they'll say they have a problem, they'll get off the radio, they'll pull off the side, and then they'll use their cell phones because they're not allowed to use a cell phone while they're driving, and they will then call in. We don't want to broadcast because it's 30-something buses, 12 schools, so we just say we need to have you call, or they'll go back to the school, something. It says may. We don't do that, but we
So
may.
But that
if
gives
they
the latitude.
cannot, for whatever reason, get to the student's home, rather than let them off 2 doors down, the student stays on the bus until they can find another opportunity. But so like I said, I was thinking about those situations, not where someone was being unruly and letting them off.
Right.
And so that's why I was wondering do we need to spell that out where, for whatever reason, the child can't get off at their normal stop? Does that need to be spelled out further?
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. It could, and we've had cases where the road has been blocked for construction or an accident, and they have to walk further down.
Yes.
A lot of times they'll try to go around it, a different route, but they'll do what they can to get the kid as close as they can.
Okay.
Mr. Settles?
I'm sorry. My concern is it would probably, what Mr. King is talking about would probably be better served in the policies and procedures than in the actual policy here. Am I getting it right? Because that has so many variables in it, as far as if there's construction, if there's a huge pothole, if somebody's house
I can
is on
see
fire.
your house, so I just can't drop you off in front of it.
Because my question, and because it's not in the policy here, but it may be in the procedures or the operating manual, what do we, with the kindergarten students, do they still get dropped off at their door? Does it still work like that? Or
We will not release a kindergarten student until we see an adult or one that the adult has said an older sibling can take the child. So a lot of times we take buses back to the school with a kindergarten child. Yeah. I was listening in today, and it was a first grade student that the bus driver was not comfortable with.
Sure.
Letting him off, and I'm listening to the radio because I do that a lot to hear what's going on out there, and the instruction was, if you do not see the parent and you do not feel comfortable, take the child back to school. And so that's pretty much our standard modus operandi, what we do.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
My real question was on line 6, where it says that every year bus drivers shall be given the policies, or should it read better, given a copy of the policies and procedures relative? Because it makes it sound like you're going to stand up and insert these policies. They're going to be given the policies.
Well, like these policies, these board policies, there's some adjustments to them because of the new state laws, so they'll be getting that when they go through their in-service training with us. And I think that's one of the TCA things that they have to be given to make sure they know.
So I'm just saying it may, I guess I'm looking at a reading standpoint. Every bus driver should be given a copy of the policies and procedures rather than just given the policies and procedures. Just grammatical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do that.
They do get a handbook.
Yeah.
Put it in, okay.
Barry?
Since we're talking about transportation, a couple of years ago I had a chance to ride on a bus, and it was a great experience, so I encourage everybody to take them up on that. They actually encourage you to go ride the bus, and I had a great opportunity. They do the 100 and something point. I mean, she did the whole bus inspection. Oh yeah, pre-checked. I got up at 5:30 or whatever, and I was right there when they started and right there when they ended. But I encourage everybody to try to do that. It was a eye-opening experience. But with that, I'll make a motion. We approve this policy.
All right, have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. King, thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. Thank you. All right. Board policy, private vehicles.
This one has to do with employees that need their private vehicles for school purposes. And this is something Kelly and I worked on, I guess, the last couple of years where we've had instances where that has needed to happen. You might have a case, for example, we have students who are going to the math contest, and there are only 4 students that are going. So we have developed permission forms that are pretty tight, I think, on when that can happen. We've also had instances at night. I can think of several. Well, not several, but we may have one a year after a basketball game when a parent cannot come pick up a child. And typically what happens with that is if there's an SSCO there, then we have that SSCO accompany that principal. The principal will call me and say, hey, Linda, I have a child here. And usually I'll call Kelly before I ever call back. And so we have had instances of that. So that's what this addresses, is the necessity when it becomes necessary for employees to use their private vehicles.
Mr. Barrett?
It mentions a permit in lines, I think it was 5 through 6. I was just wondering, is that going to be through central office, or is that something we do now?
That's going to come. Go ahead, Kelly.
we have a form that is specifically designed, and that would be the situation where you know ahead of time that someone may have to take, like the 4 students to the math contest. It's better just to take them in a car or van than take them a whole huge bus.
It's more a form, not a permit.
Right.
So when they say permit, you mean the form? Okay, all right, okay.
It's the same type of form that you sign to send someone on a field trip.
All right, do we have a motion to approve policy 3.404?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? And there is none. All right. Reports and information testing process.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Smith had asked about having a report tonight for the testing process since we're starting. Well, actually, it kind of goes all year long. So I've asked Ms. Soffit if she would come and report to the board.
All right. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Favorite topic.
Hello.
I had Lisa at the beginning of the meeting just give you just a stapled handout of just a couple of things, just so you guys remind yourselves of the tests that we have in Murfreesboro City required by the state. I highlighted on the second page for you guys. We, of course, have TCAP tests, the TN Ready for grades 3 through 8. We also have for our students with severe cognitive needs, they take the alternative assessment, not the Gen Ed TN Ready. They take the ALT assessment, and that's for grades 3 through 6 in our district. We also opted this year to take the second grade assessment, and when we opted in to take the second grade assessment, that means we also opted in to take the second grade alternative assessment. So again, our students with severe cognitive needs take the alternative version of that form, or excuse me, of that test. This year we also had to participate in ELA standalone field testing. We had 10 of our 12 schools who were chosen by the state to do that. We also had Siegel Elementary that was chosen to participate in the 4th grade NAEP assessment this year. That was in January. Our Access for ELs is our state testing that's mandated through state and federal law, where we have to test all of our EL students and also our English as second language learners whose parents have waived ESL services. By law, they still have to be assessed with the Access assessment. And then again, at the bottom, we have second grade assessment and ALT assessment. So those are the state mandated assessments that we as a district have to ensure that all our 2nd through 6th graders participate in. Just a quick rundown of the process. A lot of people are involved in behind the scenes of this process, but this year in particular, the state has added kind of a safety net feature with testing, because when we get our data back in the fall, one of the things we have to make sure is that all the bubbling, the coding, and so forth for all of our students is correct because of the demographic data we get when we get the breakdown from the state in the fall, into summer, early fall. So this year they created what's called a visibility tool, and the visibility tool works with our EIS, our system information system, where all of our student demographic information is housed. So April Zavisa and I worked really diligently on that starting in January, because when it was up and running, we had to make sure every 2nd through 6th grader actually hit the state database. So that's really important. We could see a student in our end in Skyward and do attendance and do grades, but if there was a problem in the upload with that student to the state, they would not show. That's really important when it comes to funding. So for example, with our immigrant students, we pull in late fall for an immigrant grant. So if we don't have all of their demographic data correct, we lose out on money in that particular area. So EIS, April and I started working on that, and as of 2 weeks ago, we touched every 2nd through 6th grader's record on EIS and the visibility tool to make sure that all the data, the demographic data, was accurate. So that's where it begins. Access testing, of course, when you look at the handout there, our WIDA testing was in March, and it ended about a week ago, and everything's mailed back, and we will probably get results because the window was earlier this year, the last week of school, so that's going to be exciting because kids, if they exit on that particular test, they get to exit going for ESL, English Language Support class. So that's exciting for those kids, and especially if we can tell them before the end of the school year, because they're really excited when they get that information. So we've already tested this year. We've already begun the ALT testing for our special ed students, and we're getting ready to start TCAP testing on April 16th. And then a week later, on the 23rd, we'll start the TCAP TN Ready assessment for second grade. On the time tests, on the first page, I just wanted to give that to you guys so you could see the amount of time that each grade for subject areas, they will be assessed. I won't read that to you, but it is this year, 3rd and 4th grade, the time was shaved by the state in science and social studies because the ELA versions of the tests were lengthened to become a little more rigorous with the reading standards. And there's a lot of reading and writing associated with social studies as well, so that was the intention of the state to reduce those two particular tests. Tests come into central office. The two secretaries in the instruction department and I, we get them off the UPS truck. We had about 10 pallets of tests that we've sorted by school, put back on pallets, labeled how many boxes out of whatever, and then our maintenance crew, Larry was here, he's incredible with helping loan us his yard crew guys. They're put on the box trucks and the pallets and then delivered, and then of course assistant principals and principals sign off on the materials when they arrive. In the meantime, the APs are getting their schools ready for testing, going over all the security measures that have to be followed by the state, and training the teachers and the EAs that are going to be helping proctor and give the assessments. The tests arrive in their schools. They're sorted by grade levels, by classrooms, and also by small groups. ELs can test with certain accommodations, and our special ed students can test with certain accommodations. And then testing is a 3-week process this year, which is very nice. The state has given us that amount of time. We cut off testing about 3 days before the window closes, the May 4th window closes, because I have to go in and physically count every piece of test material that has been delivered to us and account for those. We box up, and then Larry's crew comes behind us, gets them all. We bring them back to CO. We label box 1 out of 450 and get them shrink wrapped on the pallets and ready to go back on the UPS truck.
Wow.
A whole lot.
That's it in a nutshell. Do you guys have any questions?
Yes, I have a question regarding the test times chart. Is this the allocated time that's given by the state, or is that the actual time?
That is the actual time, yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
It's the actual time that will be given. In other words, that's the amount of class time that will be used to give the test.
Yes, sir, it is. Mm-hmm.
And all of these are cumulative then. So like in grade 4 where you got 222 for the language arts and 115 for math and all of that, that's cumulative time.
Yes, sir, per subject. Mm-hmm.
Through the whole school year. I mean,
for the 3 testing weeks, yes.
Oh, 3 testing.
3 testing weeks, yes, sir.
All right, good. I understand that better. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am. You have your work cut out for you.
Yes.
I will know. All right. Enrollment.
Yes, this is the end of the 7th period for enrollment numbers. The state uses the 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 7th period to determine our base number for next year. We grew between the 6th and 7th period 49 students, which is a little bit scary that we grew that many. Yeah. Case and Lane grew 13. Mitchell Nielsen grew 19. Hobgood grew 10. Now, those are the big movers in the district. Overall, the numbers are that we've grown 289 students since the end of last year. Our attendance rate went back up to 96%. We're over the flu, it looks like, so that's good news. And our pupil-teacher ratio is, on average, 19.92 for the whole district. It's 19.35 K3 and 20.84 for 4 through 6. So the 7th period, this ends the time that we get any kind of credit for anything for future future months. That's it. If we go down or up, it doesn't matter to the state. It's where we are now. Does anybody have any questions on the numbers other than?
And we're going to start moving dirt out on Veterans Parkway in the next couple of weeks.
Actually, actually, we may not be starting to move dirt, but we may have a decision real fast, hopefully.
I was being facetious.
I know. Well, I have my shovel ready. If you'd like for me to go out, all you have to do is say, Linda, go move some dirt. I can do that.
I'm with you.
Sir, very much. All right, under other business you have before you, I made a challenge to you back in October about our boardmanship programs, and Ms. Van Cleve received this week not anything that I had done, but she received from TSBA your individual points and what you've done and what you need to do. So if you have not made progress on achieving that next level, I hope that you will do so real quickly. All right, anything else coming for us tonight, Mr. Settles?
I will say that, and I don't know if it's on here on this one, I did get an updated transcript. I attended the board and superintendent's relations summit on the 16th of March. I think that's
You will probably need to call TSBA.
I just didn't look through here. I think it's, yeah, okay, I'm not.
I'm sorry, Ms. Van Cleve says she would do that for us.
Okay, and I will be attending the safety summit.
Oh.
School safety summit. It's going to be on the 18th at the Embassy Suite, so we'll be there for that. Thank you, Ms. Van Cleve, for getting me all registered up. Oh, yeah, it's going to be a full room.
We talked about the other day.
You don't want to?
Yeah.
I think, given recent events, I'd actually had this in mind before what happened in the Rutherford County system, where a student was expelled for having a gun at school. I don't know what type of gun, rifle, handgun, I don't know. I thought it would be a good idea for us to review our policy for if a student brought a handgun to school. I'd like to just go over what that is, or if not just a handgun, how about a weapon? Just to review it, because I'll be honest, I don't know the details of that type of policy right now. And I'm not saying that the child brought the gun to school to harm people. He thought it was cool and wanted to show it off and thought his friends might like to see it. What is our policy for that type of situation? And I just thought that'd be something that we'd like to just go over, see what we thought.
We'll go over, that's going to be under zero tolerance. Basically, it says when a gun is brought, then you're expelled for a year, but the director of schools, and only the director of schools, interestingly enough, can be the one that can adjust that, but I can have that for you.
Can we do that at our next meeting?
Can.
Now, this question, and I know what you're saying, if the student is expelled from our school system, all right, then they are remanded to where?
From our school system?
Where can they go?
They could apply to another school system, but it would be up to that superintendent to accept that student. And we had that. We haven't had it recently. We did have it, I would say, about the second year that I was here. We had a student who was requesting to come into our district that had been zero tolerance from another district.
And then it's up to our director of school whether or not we accept or reject.
It is.
Is that right?
Yes, it is. And that's one of the few laws that really has that specificity in it, but it's there.
I think Rutherford County has, they have the alternative schools that student can be sent to if the director approves that. Am I right, Kelly?
Right, but the alternative school doesn't start until the upper grade.
I know. I'm just saying that's what they have. Yeah.
There's not, that I'm aware of, alternative schools for elementary age.
Oh, I don't think so either. Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing it. Mr. Ballard?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to bring up the idea of, I know we haven't had a retreat in a while, and I know that maybe after school's out during the month of June or so, we could look at having a retreat. A couple of things on my request for that would be that we are able to look at the teacher survey results, or employee survey results, and go through that. And then good update on construction plans and questions and answers about where we are on the planning for that. And then, as I've said before, I'd like to really identify and work on some measurable objectives for our school system.
Okay.
Right now, I know we have tests and we get results on tests, and I know we get certain social activities that we're involved in, but I don't know what the measurables are to say, yeah, we did a lot better job last year or this year than we did last year, or we're losing ground, so.
We also need to go over, and that would be a really good time, but we need to go over the strategic plan and get that developed and hammered out.
Now that is, when is the city election? Is that May?
It's in August.
August.
So
August.
do you want to do that in August, or do you want to do that in June? Do you want people who aren't going to be a part of that policy involved with it, or do you want the new people?
Well, I hesitate because I'm just saying I'd like to have some experience involved in that. And
I'll give you my experience because Dr. Brown and I were invited to that. I remember right when we got elected, we were invited to y'all had a conference. And that was my first school board meeting, was sitting down with that. So I would like to have you and Nancy with that, if we could. I think it'd be a little intimidating for new board members to be in a visioning and setting a vision. Or it could go the other way. Maybe we want the new members.
Either way.
I know, yeah.
Tossing that out there.
It could go either way, I guess.
I lean towards sooner rather than later because things start to happen.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of in favor of that too, especially with the experience aspect of it. I was going to suggest that we carve out some time when we're at summer law conference, but if you're talking about the plan, I don't think we'll have time. But if
Well,
it was
I am
just gonna be
certainly not.
something-
I
well,
mean,
you're not gonna
I'm
be at
not
summer-
going
you're not
to
gonna
use
be
the
at summer
taxpayer
law.
money to go to summer law conference.
Well, you won't be there. But I was going to say that would be a good time since we'll all be there. We could at least meet
We
for
could
some
meet
time
and
during that.
discuss it. I don't know that we would
Yeah.
have time to have
Right, we wouldn't.
full-blown, I mean, of course, we're not doing anything on Thursday this year, but that Friday's a full day.
Mm-hmm.
And then Saturday is,
It's a half day.
well, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
If we could get it done before then, it'd be great, so we could go into next year with it, I think. And we'll be going into school that third, fourth week in
December
July.
Before summer law?
Yeah, sometime in June
Summer law
would
is
be
right.
good, I think.
It's the weekend before we start in service.
Getting ready for in-service and stuff. So you
All right, anything else coming before this board tonight?
Let's have it at your house.
If not, we'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Have a second.
Second.
And thank you, Mr. Ballard. All in favor, good night.
I'm out.
Make the man quit.